Bring down the power. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Stop hell and damnation. Bring down the power. Love to heal a nation is the greatest power. A wind of destruction is blowing over this land. And now the earth is a trembling with man's oppression of man. Now the time come to sit down and rediscover what's life. Show the world the true meaning of real love, power, not strife. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Stop hell and damnation. Love to heal a nation. Put a hand on the fire and cleanse the wicked. Right now, all of them who does worship, greed and vanity must bow. Unity is the banner, so come together. I say, and this love is for freedom, it's growing stronger each day. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Stop hell and damnation. Love to heal a nation. So rejoice in a rhythm of celebration. Come on. Lift your voice with a feeling of satisfaction as one. And let we move with a purpose, all freedom lovers. Hold tight. Stepping out of the darkness with one direction inside. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Stop hell and damnation. Love to heal a nation. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say. Stop hell and damnation.
Peace and blessings today. You're speaking with Brother Ifawumi Oshundele.
Blessings. This is Brother Wole Ifa. To the pledge.
Today we're gonna speak on the 42 ideals of my eyes, or called the laws of my eyes. It says I will honor virtue. I will benefit with gratitude. I am peaceful. I respect the property of others. I affirm that all life is sacred. I give offerings that are genuine. I live in truth. I regard all altars with respect. I speak with sincerity. I consume only my fair share. I offer words of good intent. I relate in peace. I honor animals with reverence. I can be trusted. I care for the earth. I keep my own counsel. I speak positively of others. I remain in balance with my emotions. I am trustful in my relationships. I hold purity in high esteem. I spread joy. I do the best I can. I communicate with compassion. I listen to opposing opinions. I create harmony. I invoke laughter. I am open to love in various forms. I am forgiving. I am kind. I act respectfully of others. I am accepting. I follow my inner guidance. I converse with awareness. I do good. I give blessings. I keep the waters pure. I speak with good intent. I pray the goddess and the God. I am humble. I achieve with integrity. I advance through my own abilities. I embrace the all. And those virtues of my eye, the control of my thought, the control of my actions, devotion of purpose, having faith in the ability of my teacher to teach me the truth, having faith in myself to assimilate the truth, having faith in myself to wield the truth, being free from resentment under the experience of persecution, being free from resentment under the experience of wrong, cultivating the ability to distinguish between right and wrong, and cultivating the ability to distinguish the real from the unreal. Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe, Ashe. Thank you for that, Brother Fawumi. So we're off to a new start this week. Today's show, we're going to focus on the topics of African American, African traditional religion in our two major ports, New Orleans and South Carolina. I will have the pleasure and honor to talk about the Afro-Creole New Orleans voodoo tradition. Brother Ifawumi, tell us about what you'll talk about.
I'm going to talk about the Gullah Geechee of South Carolina, along the waters and the ports that brought many of us here.
Ashe. Basically, I think New Orleans, the ports of New Orleans and Charleston, South Carolina represent our Ellis Island. That's
you are
most of us came through.
You are very correct, Brother Wale. Very correct. Many of us are here through those major ports. And from those ports, we field on in into the interior of the United States.
And in addition to those things, we are going to have our continual weekly discussion on Pan-African spirituality, uses and purposes. And like I said, in the second segment, we will get to the New Orleans tradition and the South Carolina tradition. And then in our third segment, we're going to be blessed to have Brother Ifawumi lead us in a discussion of modern divination techniques. And I will do a short spotlight feature on a Pan-African cultural group, the Akan, which is quite a large umbrella group encompassing over 20 different cultural groups, including the very popular Ashanti Empire. But right now, let's talk a little bit about our ongoing conversation on Pan-African spirituality. Purpose, Brother Fawumi, feel free to jump in if you like. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to introduce our third compadre in this broadcast. That's Sister Omilade Anu. She started with us last week, and she is the voice that sounds so nice when you hear it.
So glad to have her. So glad to have Sister Omilade.
Yeah, Omilade.
Omilade.
Mm-hmm. And we will be bringing some announcements and coming events in the world of the Anu Nation, things that our Chief Jegna is doing, things that we plan to do in the future, and of course, things that the Anu priestly order student body will be participating in. And that includes a once-a-month appearance on this show where we'll have a roundtable discussion just among some of the students of the Anu order. So that should be very exciting. Looking forward to that greatly. Brother Ifawu.
Yes.
Can you give us just a wee bit taste of what we're going to experience in the second segment, in your segment on the Geechee Gullah tradition?
Oh yes, we're gonna discuss some of the major tribes also that makes up the Gullahs. And many people do not know or understand that we in the diaspora are a blending of several cultures, of several bloodlines from West Africa. There's no true Igbo, Fula, Nende, Mandinka in the United States. You know, there's various cultures due to the tragic experience of slavery. And I'm just going to go into some of those things today. Also with the food, even some of the characteristics, and some of the tribe characteristics are prevalent in the people here in the diaspora today. You have some tribes that were very, very good warriors, and we're going to get all into that.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it. And on the New Orleans side, we will examine the Afro-Creole culture, a culture that is not very well known but has produced so many things that aren't well known, like our jazz tradition and so many of the African aspects that are in New Orleans. And in addition to that, we're going to be introduced to, like Brother Ifawumi talks about, a cultural merge in South Carolina. Same thing happened in New Orleans between the Kikongo, the Senegambian tradition, and of course the Guinea, the Bay of Guinea, Nigeria, Benin. The Voodoo tradition, the Ifa tradition, all that's going to come up. But first, we're going to go to our first break. Sister Omilade, are you there?
I'm here.
Sounds great.
According to legend, there was a time when Earth was pure, free of all evil. Unicorns, pearl paved pathways, sky so bright, tonight no problem. When only positivity polluted the conscience, and something went wrong. My name is Insight. Let's go. Waterfall slows down, breeze, the sun leaves. Cumulus clouds overshadow the area. A cave had appeared with a glowing interior. Inferior primates appeared at the seashore. Search for the knowledge in a natural resource. Mind file power in the force of a narrow path leads to sacred travelers that expanded to a huge community. Trees cloud down, make room for you and me. Machinery for you will spread more pollution. Scientific breakthroughs form illusions. Positive intentions make the negative easy. Sleazy, spectacular species. Reach keys in life, mixing your own formula. Curing the conscious, develop the medicine. Practical principles expose better things. It's the God. Of your group. It's the God.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Well, I guess it's time for us to get into our cultural segments. I will go first if that's okay with you. Thank you. All right. Very excited about talking to you all about the African American Afro-Creole tradition of New Orleans and the voodoo and the Gris voodoo tradition that came through it. This first I'd like to say there is so much information on New Orleans culture, which starts back in the 1700s. There's so many historic events. It was part of another nation at one time, only becoming part of America with the Louisiana Purchase, done by Thomas Jefferson, our third president. He bought the Louisiana Territory, which is basically the middle third of the United States of America. $3 million, which at that time was a lot more than it is now, but it went to finance Napoleon's ongoing wars. He decided to try to invade Russia as opposed to sprout a new civilization in the New World. But that's neither here nor there. New Orleans has a long and rich history, so we won't cover it all, but we will cover just a bit. We will be using a couple of major texts. One is called I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I have the subtitles of this correct. It's called Africans in Colonial America. Africans in Colonial Louisiana, the Development of Afro-Creole Culture in the 18th Century. Now, that book is written by Gwendolyn Mitlow Hall, who is Professor Emeritus at Michigan State University. So she's an Emeritus of History at Rutgers, but I believe she retired from Michigan State. And she is the author of Slavery and African Identity, exploring the links, social control, Haitian society, the comparative of Saint Dominique and Cuba. And she's edited several books. So we want to thank her because she broke the mold. She was a researcher who used both an understanding of the Spanish language and the French language, the languages that were governing this place before it became America. So her review of the subject matter is more extensive than most. But first off, what is an Afro-Creole? Well, I think we know what Afro is. It's from the African. It's a prefix, shortened version of the word African, but the term Creole is the thing that continues to be something of a mysterious term. Most people today associate it with mulatto-looking people. That's the presentation in popular culture. But the word comes from a Portuguese term, which means homeborn. So a Creole was an enslaved African who was born into it in the United States or in the West, as opposed to being imported through the Middle Passage, and those people were considered Africans. Okay, so a Creole is not just when and where you were born, it's a merger of cultures, living in this new world, but being of the African tradition. And unlike which is the basic notion that the Africans couldn't communicate with each other in their native languages and what have you, we find that that's totally not true. Actually, the first groups that came to Louisiana in large groups were the Senegambian, particularly the Bambara and Mende. And so the Creole language of Louisiana, similar to the Creole language of Haiti, is more of a Senegambian meets French mix, as opposed to a more Yoruba meets French mix. This is the Haitian thing, more Benin, more Gulf of Benin. So that's a taste of what we have going on with Afro-Creoles. Now, the voodoo tradition, many may be familiar with that, coming out of Benin, at the time called the Dahomey Empire, which is current-day Republic of Benin. That tradition has traveled broadly, but as I said, the earliest Africans in the Louisiana area were Senegambian. They brought that tradition, and second to them were the Central Africans from the Congo, where we get Congo Square, where we get certain female leaders of the voodoo tradition out of the Congo tradition. We will get into that shortly. And in addition to that, of course, we have our Ifa, Yoruba tradition. The Akan is heavily influenced here, but it's a merge of the different types of African traditional religions or spirituality. And thus, it may not be as correct to call it voodoo. It may be more correct to use a term that's more unique to the area, even though it didn't originate here. And that's a term called Gree-Gree. And within the Gree-Gree tradition, you have, again, it's a creolization of spiritual traditions. So Gree-Gree is Afro-Creole, and Afro-Creole is Gree-Gree. Okay? So we have a history of a large, fluid, mixing population, a port city, people constantly in and out, all kinds of traditions shared. That's Afro-Creole voodoo. Now, the Marie Laveau aspect within this tradition is where we're going to sink our teeth in to get the more detailed information. But I'd like to point out before we go there that there was a long tradition of female leaders of the spiritual tradition, the indigenous spiritual tradition here in New Orleans, which was something of a uniqueness, especially from continental African customs. You find more examples of female leadership today, particularly in the New World. Brazil is quite known for their female leaders. Okay, we have one leader took charge, and her name was Zenita Dede, and she, from records, it shows that she was from the Congo. And she, of course, had a lot of Congo influences in her spiritual tradition. But she took on a protege, a guy from the Senegambian area. He called himself royalty. He claimed to descend from royalty and called himself Prince. He's most popularly known as Dr. John, which the popular musician, that's the person who he took the name from. And now I look online and I look up Dr. John, and all you see is the popular musician. But Dr. John was also known as Gullah John, Bayou John, and he lived in a part of town that was very near the Bayou St. John area, the waterway that was made popular by its use by the pirate, John Lafitte. Okay? And there was a movie on that, and Lafitte was played by Yul Brynner. I remember seeing that as a kid. Well, the Bayou St. John cuts through New Orleans, and Dr. John eventually, through doing spiritual works, he eventually became a property owner, and a rather large property owner. But being illiterate, he was eventually swindled out of that property by shady business deals. But anyway, Dr. John is the connecting link between the tradition of Sunita Dede, the Congolese priestess, and Marie Laveau. Now, Marie Laveau was born in Haiti, supposedly by a French planter father and an enslaved African mother. But after the Haitian Revolution, she and a number of other Haitians came to New Orleans in a large immigration, one of two large Haitian immigrations to the Louisiana area over the centuries. And supposedly she was not knowledgeable about the traditions upon coming here, but she became a protege to Dr. John. Dr. John, who was an older man at the time, he guided her, not only in the ways of the spirit, but also in social and political concerns. At that time in New Orleans, there was a community called Free People of Color. It is important to point out that the system of enslavement and colonization down here is different than the rest of the United States. Unlike the Anglophile greater U.S., down here was French and Spanish. It was Catholic. Okay, with the Catholics, you have the saints. The saints, many people have drawn comparison between the saints and the Orisha. And that system is more parallel, more similar in structure. And we get into the notions of syncretism and things of this nature. But the way the French did it, they set up a racial hierarchy where there were 16 different racial designations. We've heard of some of them. Octoroon, I think is, I won't go into that. Quadroon, I think is 1/4 African. Octoroon is 1/8 African. So you have this delineation through 16 different versions. So a person could look the same way, but their hair texture might be different, or their facial features, or the hair texture may be European-like, facial features European-like, but just a shade or two darker than most Europeans were the only distinguishing factors, or a fullness of the lips. Some people say, or certain characteristics in their presentation and style. But people learned that to marry or to reproduce with a person with more European features, so that your child may have more European features, was a way to climb a social ladder. People wanted their kids to have more privileges than they had, so they were willing to do certain things. So that tradition developed. We hear about it and we see it in popular culture, a system called placage, where people basically sell their kids to white people in exchange for a bank account, a residence, and some people worked out deals where the offspring might be able to get an education, get an occupation. So consequently, we had people out of that community, and that community was called the Free People of Color. We had more people in that community advance quicker economically, socially, educationally in the black community. Which all of that came to a head after the purchase of Louisiana territories and the Civil War. Then those people with all the 16 racial designations just became black like everybody else. So we had white, black, just two racial designations. People lost all those petty privileges along the way. There was a resentment all around, and believe it or not, some people of color actually wanted the South to win the Civil War so they could keep their petty privileges. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is, while Marie Laveau was multi-ethnic, she was not part of that. She didn't distinguish people. She didn't, evidently, based on an understanding, didn't look down on the enslaved or the people who looked African as well as were African. She helped people gain their freedom through different business arrangements and utilizing the system. She allied herself with the top Catholic priest in town, who allowed her to do ritualistic ceremonies in the pulpit of St. Louis Cathedral, the oldest Catholic church in this country. But not in the hemisphere, I don't think, but in this country. So Marie Laveau used a number of different tactics. She was a business owner, hairdresser. She had a line of hairdressers who served many of the wealthy patrons of the area, collecting gossip and information that could be used. She was at war. And I think what we miss about Marie Laveau, most of all, is that she's a heroine for for American womanhood, not just African American. She was multi-ethnic, but as far as African American women are concerned, she merges the efforts of people like Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman together. She may have not, carried people to freedom the way that they did, or exercised her energies the way they did, but she did many of the same things. Now, what we have to understand about Marie Laveau is we're not just talking about one person. There were actually two of them. And not only did she develop a kingdom or an empire at which she led, but she developed a dynasty because her daughter of the same name took over from her after her death. So not only do we have female royalty in America and African royalty or royalty practicing African traditions at that, but we also have a dynasty where power was handed down. We've never had something like that, and most people don't know, and they never show you that in the films, okay? So Marie Laveau, as a priestess, she basically presided over a number of semi-independent priestesses underneath her and priests. We will call root doctors, gree men, people who necessarily didn't deal with the sacred scripture, but they used techniques. They did spiritual works. They tapped into nature in a metaphysical way. And she led that group and organized it in a way that people before her had not done. And people before her had fought over the leadership position, and once it was over, it was over. She was able to maintain, the Laveau dynasty was able to maintain the power from person to person. That's a different level. It's a much different level. So, point out a couple of other interesting facts about Marie Laveau in our time that's left. Like with all things, nothing's 100%, nothing's perfect. The Laveaus did have their trials and tribulations, like the rest of us. For instance, both mother and daughter were somewhat unsuccessful in marriage. The first Marie Laveau, who is purported to have led the voodooists for 60 years here, dying in 1880. Okay, and then a short reign by her daughter before the tradition moved from the females to the male musicians through the jazz idiom. That's something somewhat controversial. That's a hop a lot of people overlook, the spirituality, and that's one of the reasons why Louis Armstrong is so important. and we will hopefully touch on him for a moment or two, but I want to let you know that Marie Laveau, she was married first as a young woman, and mysteriously her husband vanished after a short time. No one ever knew what happened to him, but eventually she got involved with another person, and this person turned out to be a Frenchman of European descent, a white man, okay? But this white man was so supportive and so in love with Marie Laveau that he went to the court to try to have himself proclaimed an African American. They wouldn't let him, but he wanted to be black in a time of enslavement in New Orleans. So that's quite a gesture. But between them, it's purported that they have 9 children. Many of them were females. Many rejected the tradition, the African tradition, in favor of the European tradition. But one who didn't was Marie II, who favors her mother greatly in appearance, but she was not of the same ilk. Stories about Marie I clearly point out that she had a connection with the energies that the Yoruba would call the Yemaya. And she was a maternal figure connected with the water. Her daughter seems to be a more tempestuous person, lacks the patience, lacked the skill, but still skill at doing the spiritual work, but she still had some influence in terms of leadership ability. And it was under her reign that the organized tradition of voodoo dynasty in New Orleans crumbled. And in the late 1880s, we have the rise of Buddy Bolden, the trumpet player who's credited with bringing the big noise. He's the one who he brought the music from just a bluesy thing to that New Orleans flavor. The extra beat on the fourth beat of the measure. I think every other measure there's a drop beat or something, and it's in everything down here, from the carnival music to the second line music to the wild Indians. We have the Mardi Gras Indians down here who also are performers. They don't just walk around with the feathers on. Sometimes they get on stage and perform music. So there's a lot of that. And we've been very blessed. Now, time is short to round things off, however. New Orleans voodoo is constantly under siege of commercialism and exploitation. Here today, to just skip ahead to contemporary things, we have a situation I guess you could call white voodoo and black voodoo. You have people of European descent claim initiation and priesthood from Haitian sources, came here, set up shop. And just to name a few things, we have a professional arena football team called the New Orleans Voodoo. We have Voodoo Barbecue. Nationally, there are Voodoo bicycles, Voodoo computer, software. Voodoo is a lot. But we have a Voodoo festival here. And that festival is second only to the Jazz and Heritage Festival. Now, I cannot tell you how much money they made last year, but I can tell you this. The Essence Festival, which is an annual festival here, is a 3-day event. It tends to pull in $150 million. The Voodoo Fest pulls in more than that. And what is Voodoo Fest? It's a musical festival with a lot of, some people would call burned out old rock bands that come down, and with some interesting bands thrown in from time to time, for flavor. But so we have a spiritual war going on here, and it has been going on since the time of Marie Laveau and before. So what is the future? Well, with a tradition like this, hopefully the future will involve mutual organization throughout this country, because this is our stem. This is our African traditional religious stem that goes back since we were here. That's our kingdom, our dynasty, our empire that has had kings and queens, and a dynasty that has passed on things, which is a tradition of activism, business and entrepreneurship, priestly, cultural recognition, identification, and understanding. So we have all we need in the personhood of the Marie Laveau dynasty to do what we need today in terms of fashioning a traditional African, traditional religious denomination, if you will, here in the United States. And hopefully that will include Odu essay, or Pataki's stories in the sacred scripture from our history, African-American Orisha. Two quickly come to mind is Marie Laveau the First and Louis Armstrong, the father of American entertainment. Across the board, I think we could say. He brought the American style, and that style comes out of voodoo. In fact, Armstrong's grandmother was an acknowledged voodooist, as well as she went to the church. She went to church. There's a lot of that here. That's, I guess we call it syncretism. But that's just a taste of the Afro-New Orleans Gree tradition, a tradition that I hope to talk about more and more in the future. Drop little gems and places where you can find information. And before I close, I just want to give a title. There are a bunch of books on Marie Laveau, but I think the best I've read is called Voodoo Queen, The Spirited Lives of Marie Laveau, by a local professor called Martha Ward. She's a professor at the University of New Orleans. So, that will wrap up my presentation of Afro-Creole.
Ashe. That was excellent, Brother Wale. Also, I'm going to bring in Flip.
Okay. Well, Brother Ifawumi, I thank you very much. Now I'm very excited to hear and learn more about South Carolina and the Geechee Gullah tradition.
Okay, well, maybe I'm going to start off with, because we have many young listeners as well. So I would, when I be doing them any justice, if I give them just a little bit of history of the Gullah Geechees. Well, nearly 500,000 Gullah Geechees live between Jacksonville, North Carolina, and Jacksonville, Florida today. Now, this 500-mile stretch along the Atlantic Ocean and over in between the rivers that surround is home to the descendants of the Africans brought to Carolina colony beginning in the late 1500s. For nearly 5 centuries, their lives have been economically and politically tied to this region, along with the cash crops needed for the success, whether it was rice or tourism. Places in and around Wilmington, North Carolina, Georgetown and Charleston, South Carolina, Savannah, Jacksonville, Florida, figure prominently in the Gullah story from the beginning to now. Now, our origin and history begin on African soil. During the transcontinental slave trade, kidnapped Africans destined for American plantations were often held captive in holding cells along the West African coastline. This imprisonment brought an unprecedented large number of different Africans together under one roof and formed the basics for the large number of different Africans together. And we call this now Gullah culture. Many of our kidnapped ancestors hail from the various West and Central African tribes. The Gullahs and Geechee culture on the Sea Islands of Georgia have retained ethnic traditions for West Africa since the mid-1700s. Although the islands along the southeastern United States coast are the same collective of West Africans, the name Gullah has come to be the accepted name of the islanders in South Carolina, while Geechee refers to the islanders of Georgia. Modern-day researchers sometimes argue over the names Gullah and Geechee. Some likes the name, or they think the name. This is one problem that we have, is allowing other people to define us. Some think that name came from African tribes, the Golas. Some think it has to do with the Geechee, the Ogeechee River that runs through Georgia. So really, once you actually find your roots, you would know better, because that's not the source. Gullah Geechee is not the source of who you are. This is a group of people in slavery who came together, and it was a blending of cultures. Just like you said previously, Brother Wale, about it's been a blending of different cultures, and that's exactly what Gullah Geechee is, a blending of different cultures. Everything was not maintained. And also the Gullahs and the Geechee culture on the Sea Islands of Georgia have retained the ethnic tradition from the West Africans since the mid-1700s. The culture has been linked to specific West African ethnic groups who were enslaved on the island plantations to grow rice, indigo, and cotton starting in 1750, when anti-slavery laws ended in the Georgian colony. The rice plantations fostered Georgia's successful economic competition with other slave-based rice economies along the eastern seaboard. Coastal plantations invested primarily in rice, and plantation owners sought out Africans from the windward coast of West Africa, particularly Senegambia, later Senegal and Gambia, as well as Sierra Leone and Liberia, where rice, indigo, and cotton were indigenous to the region. Gullah culture, although formed in large part by Sierra Leoneans' customs, seemed to be a mixture to elements of different African cultures. So the Gullah's ancestors must have been from many different tribes or ethnic groups in Africa. Those from the Rice Coast, the largest group, include the Wolof, the Mandinka, Fula, Baga, Susu, Limba, Timni, Mende, Vai, Kisai, Capelli. There were also slaves brought from the Gold Coast, Calabar, and the Congo Republic, and Angola. And these groups included the Igbo, Coromante, and Yoruba. Now, over the centuries, the isolation of the rice-growing ethnic group who recreated their native cultures and traditions on the coastal islands led to the formation of identity recognized as Geechee or Gullah. There is no single West African contribution to Geechee Gullah culture. It is a collective source of many West African cultures in the diaspora. The Gullah is thought to be a shortened form of Angola, as I mentioned before. The name of the people first imported to the Carolinas during the early colonial period. The Geechee is historically considered a negative word, identifying Georgia Sea Islanders. But it became a acceptable term in light of the contemporary evidence linking it to West Africa. Although the origin of the two words are not definitive, some enslaved Africans along the coast had names that were linked to the Kisai group, leading to speculation that the term may also derive from that particular culture. Gullah storytelling, the cuisine, music, folk belief, craft, farming, and fishing tradition all exhibit strong influences from West and Central African cultures. Kidnapped and enslaved rice growers from West Africa brought with them the knowledge of how to make tools needed for rice harvesting, including the fanner baskets for winnowing the rice. The sweetgrass baskets found on the coastal islands were made in the same styles as baskets found in the rice cultures of West Africa, particularly Sierra Leone. Sweetgrass baskets also were used for carrying laundry and storing food or firewood. Few present-day members of the Geechees of the Gullah culture remember how to select palmetto, sweetgrass, and pine straw to create baskets, and the remaining weavers now make baskets as decorative art, primarily for tourists. Religious meetings and praise houses were the spiritual outlet for enslaved Africans on their plantation. Fast-paced rhythmic hand-clapping accompanied the ring shout. And the ring shout based on spiritual songs while the participants moved in a counterclockwise in a circle, making certain never to cross their feet. Some aspects of the ring shout are thought to be related to the communal dances found in many of the West African traditions. The drum was banned on southern plantations due to its immense power to communicate rebellion to slavery. Therefore, many enslaved Africans used wooden poles to keep rhythmic beats during worship in the praise houses. And that pole would be beat to the floor, to the wooden floor. They made a loud, huge bass noise. And it kept in time to the beats. The word shout is thought to be derived from salt, which is a West African word of Arabic that describes an Islamic religious movement performed to exhaustion. Since the Civil War, the ring shout have been held every Sunday church service and on weeknights in communities' meeting houses. Few elders familiar with shout songs and the body movement associated with the spiritual practices, the practices that are alive today, but the tradition is kept alive in Georgia through the McIntosh County Shouters and Georgia Sea Island Shouters. Aspects of West African heritage have survived at every stage of the circle of migration, with rice, language, spirituality persisting as cultural threads into the 20th century. The Geechee Gullah culture on the Sea Islands of Georgia have retained a heritage that spans 2 continents. At the end of the Civil War, land on the coastal islands were sold to the newly freed Africans during the Reconstruction era for the recovery of the South after the war. During the 1900s, land on some of the islands, Cumberland Island, Jekyll Island, Osaba Island, Sapelo, and St. Simon Islands, they became resort locations or reserves for natural resources. The modern-day conflict over resort development on the island presents yet another survival test for the Gullah Geechee culture. The most intact West African culture in the United States is what existed on Sapelo Island. And it's the last island with this rich West African history, which we still own our land, not completely owned by whites. In 1990, the mainlanders began acquiring parcels of land from the Gullahs to construct vacation homes. In 2012, McIntosh County property owner appraiser notified the residents of huge property tax increases. And as you all know, that would drive most of the property owners off of their land, so they may not be able to handle the high cost of maintaining that property. Now, this is an aggressive effort to many of the residents off of the land which our ancestors have fought the tyranny of local and state government since freedom. Now, this began with the tobacco era. R.J. Reynolds, who bought the mansion and most of the islands during the Great Depression, persuaded many of my ancestors who owned the rest of the islands to move to 400 swampy inland acres, which is today named Hog Hammer. After the death of R.J. Reynolds, his widow sold the state of Georgia, land that she did not even own. And this has created a legal battle which persists to this day on the last bastion of West African culture on Asafo Island, Georgia. The Gullahs achieved another victory in 2006 when the United States Congress passed the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor Act. It provides $10 million over 10 years for the preservation and interpretation of historic sites related to Gullah culture. The Heritage Corridor will extend from southern North Carolina to northern Florida. The project will be administered by the United States National Park Service with extensive consultation with the Gullah community. Gullahs have also reached out to West Africa. Many Gullah groups have made homecoming trips to Sierra Leone in 1989 and 1997 and in 2005. Sierra Leone is at the heart of the traditional rice-growing region of West Africa, where many of the Gullah ancestors originated. Bunce Island, the British slave capital in Sierra Leone, sent many African captives to Charleston and Savannah ports during the mid and late 18th century. Gullah people now organize cultural festivals every year in town, up and down the low country. Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, they have their festival in February. Beaufort, South Carolina, they have their festival in May. St. Helena's Island is in November. Sapelo Island, Georgia, is annually on the third Saturday in October. Many Gullahs migrated to New York starting at the beginning of the 20th century, and these urban migrants have lost their identity. I apologize. They have not lost their identity. Gullahs have their own neighborhood churches in Harlem, Brooklyn, and Queens. Typically, they send their children back to the rural communities in South Carolina and Georgia during the summer months to be reared by grandparents, uncles, and aunts. The Gullah people living in New York also frequently return to the Low Country to retire. Second and third generation Gullahs in New York often maintain many of their traditional customs and sometimes speak Gullah language. Many are embarrassed by Gullah Geechee culture, viewing it as a celebration of slavery. I would love to see the drum reintroduced into Gullah celebrations, while those who perform wear our traditional African clothing. Now, this is a powerful message that we are taking back our lives while writing our own history. While wear the house servant clothes, as well as those field hand clothes, reminiscing about slavery. Now, this feeds the ego and the disease of the human spirit I call white supremacy. This feeds their descendants. Many times, if you've ever been to a Gullah festival, you will see the ladies are dressed in slave-era clothing with the white starch apron, the gingham type of dress that's very long to their ankles, and the head wrapped up in the handkerchief. The men are dressed like they just came out of the field in the overalls with a shirt underneath. They're all clean, and it looks nice, but what kind of message are we sending? I wanted to express that, and because that's what's going on now here in this part of the country. You know, I do believe in giving the respect and honor to those who came before me, but we can do it in a more respectable way. We don't have to perform dressed as slaves. We don't have to do that. We can do our traditional African clothing while introducing our drums.
You've done your ancestors well. You know, I'd heard of that corridor. I didn't know it was as extensive as from, what do you say, southern North Carolina to northern Florida? That's incredible.
Greetings, one and all. This is Haru Yuya Asan Anu, Chief Jegna of the Anu Spiritual Order and Head Instructor of the Sedulu House Spiritual Center. I am bringing you Anu Nation announcements on this beautiful segment of Anu Asafo. I want to first thank you all for tuning in once again and being a supporter and a participant in this journey of the Asafo as dictated and governed by our ancestral call. I want you to all tune in tonight at 9 p.m. I will be the guest on Brother Alim Bey's show. That will be on blogtalk.com/Alim Bey. That is ALIMBEY. It is sure to be a very riveting and exciting conversation, as Alim Bey is a well-known speaker and lecturer on metaphysics, African culture, African spirituality, indigenous knowings, and ancient mythology, as well as the Moorish culture. So this will be a very interesting show, and I'm extremely excited for it. On the 28th of September this month, I will be at the annual Pagan Pride Festival at Battery Park, New York. I will be there speaking around 1 p.m., though I urge you to get there a little earlier so you can find a place to park and, of course, a place to sit. I will be lecturing on self-actualization using our beloved Orisha energies. So you want to be sure to check that out. Look for us. We'll be under a tent. You will see a sign, and there's an opportunity for you to come meet some of your fellow Mfundi, those of you who are registered members of the Anu Spiritual Training, or just to come out and learn more about the lessons and the things that we teach. Many of you have reached out for spiritual readings and help in your life as it pertains to your spiritual well-being and your divine purpose. I would advise you again to use the contact and scheduling form that is located on OrishaReligion.com as well as SeduluHouse.com. In that form, you will see a calendar program as well as an appointment scheduler that you can use to schedule time with me. If you do not require a full 1-hour consultation, you can sign up for a half-an-hour consultation, or if you are ready to be consecrated to your particular Orisha or initiated, there is a 15-minute reading that you can receive, which is called the pre-ritual reading, and that's just where we firm up the details of your actual ritual and determine how we will move forward. So I urge you all to use those forms. They are there for your convenience. That has been the Anu Nation announcements. I am Chief Jegna Yuya Asan Anu, signing off.
Those were the announcements. And it's great to know what's going on, huh? And what is available to us. And not only are those services available, they are available at such a reasonable price. It is really a positive situation. Brother Ifawumi, you around? We work in the phone lines trying to do the thing today. Okay. Well, I guess we can move forward with the cultural spotlight on the Akan people. And in lieu of Brother Ifawumi's return, when he's going to drop information on us about divining techniques. So it's always good. And I just wanted to say before I get started that, it's such a pleasure hearing the information that the brother talked about, because a short time ago, just from on a personal note, I came into this journey, this walk, not knowing that African tradition was all around me, historically and contemporarily. And now, after becoming a student in the Anu order, I'm learning all kinds of things. And Brother Ifawumi,
I'm here.
What you dropped was so enriching to me personally.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I happen to have a close friend, a sister, who is an anthropology doctoral candidate. She's doing a dissertation on the South Sea Islands, and she's a student at the University of Florida in Gainesville. So that's right in that corridor. Her family's from the area. They've come back and retired there. Just like you said, a lot of Northerners did. Her parents went up to Newark, New Jersey, and now they're retired in the Georgetown area. And I just wanted to say how proud I am of her and the tradition that she is helping to inform us about. You know, and I want you to keep up the great work that you're doing. You know, you're very modest, but I know personally your hands are in a lot of things.
Yes, yes. Modupi.
Yeah. So keep doing what you're doing, brother. You know, now, I don't want to jump ahead of you. I was going to either talk about the Akan tradition of Ghana or wait my turn and listen to you drop some more information on the divination tradition.
Of course.
Prefer.
Of course. Okay, first of all, when we went through the spotlight in our previous show, we mentioned everything, a lot of the areas of African spirituality. We mentioned our Ori, our ancestors, Orisha, but we forgot the main part, and that part is divination. And with divination, there are several methods to divination. There's the OB oracle, which consists of a coconut or cowrie shell, and Ifa divination. OB divination, the primary use is to answer simple questions, which is yes or no. Now, it is most typically used to confirm if offerings are accepted by the Orisha or Egun, or if the ceremonies may proceed, or to get a simple yes or no answer question about a person's life. OB is one of the most widely used forms of divination in the Orisha religions. OB can only be used for yes or no questions. Remember that. Utilizing OB to answer deeper questions beyond yes or no, the complete misuse of the tool. Attempting to use OB to conduct an entire reading for a person's life circumstances is also inappropriate. That person should instead seek a Dilagun reading or a reading from Ifa. Now, Ifa refers to the system of divination and verses of the literary corpus known as Odu Ifa. Yoruba religion identifies Oromila as the grand priest, as he who revealed oracle divinity to the world. Such is his association with the oracle divinity. In some instances, the term Oromila is used interchangeably with Ifa. Ifa originated in West Africa in the form of a stringent Yoruba religious system and is celebrated in traditional African medicine. It's celebrated also in Santeria or Lukumi, Candomblé, and West African and diaspora voodoo. And similarly in the Orisha, Ifa lineages all over the globe. Ifa divination, also called consultation, is performed for many purposes and a host of occasions. The purposes and occasions is what determines the instrument used in the divination session. Divination is often performed for lesser reasons, such as a regular checkup, to life-changing occasions, such as a marriage or childbirthing. Divination can also be performed for a group, a small or large, or a community. The first example are more likely for a person, couple, parent, or family. On occasion, when it's performed for the community or society, it takes on another significance. And I just want to cover when the major occasions that divination is actually performed. It's performed for the new year, called the annual divination for the new year. One occasion where a major divination is performed and the ranking Ifa emissions. are present to witness and partake. Now, this is called the divination of the New Year, which is also sometimes referred to as the first Yam Festival. This is my first time ever hearing of that. The result of such a divination will be discussed, and it will be analyzed by Ifa initiates. Okay. Also, if you're establishing a new town or settlement, there's another reason Ifa is cast, to know more about that town, the living principles and the parameters. Also, your mate selection. You will want Ifa cast for a mate selection, or if you're courting, for a potential partner. The Esentaye, if your new baby, it's her new baby right, and that's normally is a major occasion that you will consult Ifa for direction and for advice on the child's destiny and the taboos. Also, you will cast it for burial rites. For Ifa divination, we use for burial rites. Also, if you're planning a new business or enterprise or starting a new job, or if you're moving to a new location, or if you're purchasing a home, these are some of the situations in which you will have Ifa divination. Now, Ifa divination rights are claimed to provide an avenue of communication to the spiritual realm and the intent of one's destiny. Now, Oshun is known to be the first Iyanifa, although some teach that Yamajat was the first. But with divination, we've covered African divination. We've covered Ori. We've covered ancestors, Orisha, and also Olodumare. Now, I would like to personally testify here or share when I had my first divination done. I didn't know what to expect. But all of the things that I had been taught through media, I found that those things were false. I was being programmed. I sat there for a minute sitting on pins and needles. Didn't know what was about to happen, and it was nothing like that. I was assured, I was shocked. I was really, really shocked. The fact that my life can be presented to me. What's good, what's bad, the past, the present, and what's coming down the pipe can be revealed to you. And you take that information for your highest good. Sometimes you avert disaster just for divination. I would suggest to anybody to know exactly where you stand, your life purpose, to get a competent diviner to read the circumstance that's going on in your life. Because it's the truth. You may not like it. Sometimes the truth is painful. But it is the truth. Am I right, Brother Wale?
You are saying it. You are telling the truth, brother. And the truth will set us free, won't it?
That's right. That's right. I was so shocked when the Baba told me these things. I wanted to jump up and run up from out of there. But then again, I'm a strong man, and I must face the truth.
I hear you.
I had to face the truth. It's painful. You don't want to hear it. But you become a better person being able to examine what's going on.
Yeah. I remember my first reading, my first divining session. That was quite an experience as well. But I'll tell you this, however. Perhaps my most unique divining experience came through the Anu order when I was privileged to sit with Haru Yuya Sananu. And
that was the experience.
I'm still dealing with the results of that in a positive way. But that was more information. That's over an hour and a half worth of information from a regular reading. And in listening to the announcement that he's also offering a shorter version and even a I didn't catch the term, but it's pre-initiation or some other major step in one's life, a 15-minute situation just to check specific things to make sure everything's on track and moving like it's supposed to. Yes, divination is real. It unlocks a lot of things. Again, in the Anu order, we are learning to integrate what we would call different methods. They're from different traditions. But it's not different traditions because all of the energy forces and the patterns in the world are the same. We just call them different things. And I'm so happy to be with a system now where we're able to tap into all that. Thank you so much, brother, for dropping that information.
Oh, anytime, brother.
Now, I don't know if we have any questions in the queue or not, but we are looking at perhaps another 12 minutes. And I would just like to do a brief touch on the Akan people. It won't do them justice. I don't have the time, but this will hopefully become an ongoing thing. So it won't be the last time we hear of the Akan. But just to say that the Akan people are an entire ethnic group. They're native to Ghana and to Ivory Coast. And they have the largest, they're the largest ethnic group in both of those countries, roughly with a population of approximately 20 million. The Akan language, also known as Twi and Fanti, is a group of dialects within the Kwa group of languages, that's the KWA, and is in the Atlantic Congo group within the Niger-Congo phylum, which is a family of languages. Also included under the term Akan are the Bila languages, in which case it is common to speak of Akan languages as a group of languages. There are subgroups to the Akan. Many different subgroups, and I won't tell all of them, but up at the top of the list, the Ashanti, the Akuapem, the Ayam, the Akyam, the Baole, which is a renowned group for their sculpture work. We studied them in African art history. The Hatanti, the Ailin, the Abura, the Bran. There are many subgroups in these language groups. But the origin and ethnogenesis of the group, the Akan people are believed to have migrated to their current location from the Sahel and savanna regions of West Africa into the forested regions between the 10th and 12th centuries. And many Akan tell of a history as if it started in the forested regions of West Africa, as this is where the ethnogenesis of the Akan, as we know them today, happened. The kingdoms of Bonoman was established as early as the 11th century, and between the 12th and 13th centuries, a gold boom in the Akan area brought wealth to numerous groups. During different phases of the kingdom of the Bonoman, groups of Akan migrated out of the area to create numerous states based predominantly on gold mining and trading of cash crops. This brought wealth to numerous Akan states, like Awamu, and ultimately led to the rise of the most well-known Akan empire, the empire of the Ashanti. From the 15th century to the 19th century, the Akan people dominated gold mining and trading in the region. And from the 17th century on, they are amongst the most powerful groups in West Africa. This wealth in gold attracted European traders. Initially, the Europeans were Portuguese, but eventually the Dutch and British joined in the quest for Akan gold. The Akan, as you know, is predominant in Ghana, and Ghana was called the Gold Coast because of that gold. That gold mining and the gold tradition. Gold is also used. Akan gold was also used to purchase enslaved people from further up north via the trans-Saharan route. The Akan purchased the enslaved people in order to clear dense forest areas in Ghana. About a third of the population of many Akan states were enslaved people. The Akan were buyers of enslaved people and sellers of enslaved people as the dynamic in the Gold Coast and the New World changed. Thus, the Akan people played a considerable role in supplying Europeans with enslaved Africans for the transatlantic slave trade. Ghana later apologized to the descendants of the enslaved for their role, for the role that some of its people have played in the slave trade. The Akan people, especially the Ashanti, fought against the European colonials to maintain autonomy during many Anglo-Ashanti wars, the Wars of the Golden Stool, and other similar battles. By the early 1900s, all of Ghana was a colony and protectorate of the British, while the lands in the Ivory Coast were under the French control. On March 6, 1957, following the decolonialization from the British under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, the Gold Coast, Ghana, was joined to British Togoland and the northern region, upper eastern region, and upper western region of the Gold Coast to form what is today called Ghana. The Ivory Coast gained independence on August 7th, 1960. A predominant among some of the cultural products that are known from the Akan and the Ashanti in particular are the kente cloth that is so popular with African Americans, especially in their graduation uniforms. You know, the sashes, and the Akan are matrilineal people. Many, but not all, of the Akan still practice their traditional matrilineal customs, living in their traditional extended family households. The traditional Akan economy and political organizations is based on matrilineal lineage, which are the basis of inheritance and succession. A lineage is defined as all those related by maternal descent from a particular ancestor. Several lineages are grouped together into a political unit headed by a council of elders, each of whom is the elected head of the lineage, head of a lineage, which itself may include multiple extended family households. A couple other things to know. Elements of Akan culture are generally to be seen in many geographic areas. Specifically among the Akan culture are especially seen in neighboring West African peoples and some Central African populations. Akan culture has also been historically important in the New World, where Akan names were and are common. For example, the Chromo-Mantians of Jamaica and the descendants of the Akwamu in St. John. Now, we have a number of notable Akan people who made names for themselves. Top among them are Kwame Nkrumah, who is credited with starting a Pan-African movement which liberated many states in European colonialism. There's Kofi Annan, who is the first sub-Saharan African to head the UN organization and was awarded a Nobel Prize. And when they say sub-Saharan African, they really mean the indigenous Africans, not the Berbers of the North. not the Arabs of the Northeast, not the Boers of the South in South Africa, but black people, okay? And the list continues and continues, but at this point, we're coming up on the close of our show. We have 2 minutes. Not enough time to field any questions, but enough time to thank you for your attendance and to honorably let you all know that this means a lot to us. It's a sharing process. We learn as we share, right, brother?
That's so correct, Brother Wale. You always love to learn something. That's what life is about. It's a learning experience. Ashe. And with this learning, we hope that it will be a continual process. Of course, Friday evening is always a big evening for learning, as Yuya-san, our new host, the Enlightenment and Transformation shows on Foundation Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's always a plus. And we would like to make this another stop on your journey, on your weekly journey, as we drop information and pick up information from you. In our coming shows, starting next month, we're going to start having regular guests on each show, so we're looking forward to that. Brother Ifawumi, and I also want to thank everybody else again and let you know from our entire staff, including Sister Omi Lade, Brother Clay, and Ifawumi, that it is a pleasure. Brother Ifa? Yes, I'm here, brother. Brother Wale, I had a great time, and I'm sure that our listeners had a great time as well.
Well, I did, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Ashe.
So I will leave it here.